It started with silence. Not a scream, not a fight, just a folded paper slipped into a boy's hand, and everything changed after that. His name was X, the son of the richest man in the world. But in this moment, he looked like any other kid, small, confused, and alone. He didn't speak. He didn't run. He just stood there, blinking fast, holding that paper like it had shattered everything he thought was safe. Around him, students whispered. Some pulled out phones. Some just watched. No one knew what to say. Or maybe, no one had the courage to say it. Inside the office window, the principal turned away. No explanation. No apology. Just paperwork and cold decisions. The kind that follow you forever. Jonathan Roumie had been at the school to give a talk on career choices. But what he saw through that hallway window hit harder than any speech. He watched a 13-year-old walk out, alone, suspended for disruptive behavior, when all he'd done was call out something wrong. Jonathan stepped outside. No cameras. No speech. Just presence. He walked beside the boy, slow, like a father, walking a son out of a courtroom. "You okay?" he asked. The boy didn't answer, but his hand crumpled the letter tighter, as if squeezing it might squeeze out the shame. That day, something shifted, not just in that school, but in how people saw power, silence, and who we choose to stand beside when it matters most. Before we continue, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. By evening, the video had gone viral. Someone uploaded a clip, Elon Musk's son, suspended, walking alone. No sound, just heartbreak in slow motion. The internet exploded. He must have done something. Spoiled kid finally got caught. Others said, "Why does this feel wrong?" News sites picked it up fast. Elon Musk's son expelled. After calling out teacher, half-truths swirled. No official statement. No denial. Just clicks. Jonathan didn't post anything, but his name trended by nightfall, caught on camera standing beside the boy. No words, just presence. Parents began emailing the school. What happened? Was he bullied? Why no transparency? But the administration stayed silent, waiting for it all to die down. X stayed quiet too. No tweet. No post. No denial. But inside, he watched as his name became a hashtag, and his shame, a public debate. Jonathan's inbox flooded. Why were you there? What did you see? But he ignored it. He knew real change didn't come from press. It came from truth. He remembered the boy's eyes. Not scared. Not angry, just crushed. Like someone who learned too early that fairness isn't guaranteed. That night, Jonathan wrote one sentence on a notepad. It takes one voice to stop a machine. Then he picked up his phone. He didn't post a statement. He didn't go live. He texted someone powerful, someone inside, and said, "You're going to tell me the truth. Tomorrow, at 10 a.m., the meeting began. No media, no parents, just polished shoes, stern faces, and a principal trying to keep her job. Jonathan sat in the back, uninvited. But no one asked him to leave. Sometimes silence makes more noise than protest. The internal report was short. Disruptive behavior, insubordination, disrespecting faculty. But no details, no context, no voices from the students who were actually there. Jonathan asked, "Was there video from inside the class?" The superintendent paused. "There was, but it's not relevant." That's when he knew they were hiding something. The teacher in question, Mr. Lawton, didn't show up. Medical leave. Convenient timing. But rumors swirled that he'd made a remark no teacher should ever make. A janitor testified next. Soft voice. Nervous hands. "I heard the boy say, 'That's racist, sir.'" Then nothing. Just silence. Like that sentence wasn't supposed to be repeated. Jonathan leaned forward. So he didn't shout. Didn't throw anything. Didn't swear. "No, sir," the janitor replied. Just those words. "That's racist, sir." The principal shifted in her seat. He challenged a teacher's authority. Jonathan replied coldly. He challenged a bad teacher's behavior. The room held its breath. For the first time, the narrative cracked. A boy wasn't punished for bad behavior. He was punished for not staying silent. Jonathan stood up, grabbed his coat, and said, "If you don't clear his name, I will. And trust me, my microphone is louder than yours." That night, Jonathan got a voicemail from a number he didn't recognize. It was Elon, not the billionaire, not the icon, just a dad. "Hey, Jonathan, I saw the video. I wasn't told about the incident until it hit the media. X doesn't tell me much these days." His voice cracked slightly. He's been distant, quiet. "I thought it was just teenage stuff. I had no idea it ran this deep. I appreciate you being there. Most people wouldn't. They'd walk past. Or worse, film it. You didn't." Jonathan sat with the message for a long time. He hadn't meant to become part of this. But maybe this was the part that mattered. The next morning, X texted him for the first time. "Thank you for not treating me like I'm famous. Just like I'm human." Jonathan replied, "You are human. That's the part they forgot," and attached a screenshot of the school board reopening the case. That day, news outlets tried reaching Jonathan for statements. He gave none. The boy deserved space, not spectacle. In quiet corners of the internet, the story changed tone. Now it wasn't about who his father was. It was about what the system did. Sometimes, justice starts with a camera. Sometimes, with a father's voicemail. But mostly, it starts with someone who refuses to walk away. They didn't plan a press event, but the school forced their hand. They gave a final decision in a press release. No meeting, no apology. Jonathan stood beside X, who hadn't spoken publicly once until now. He asked for one mic, 1 minute, and complete silence. "I didn't try to start a fight," he said. "I tried to stand up for a kid who was being mocked. I didn't want this." His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't hide. "I just wanted to feel like school was a place I could speak the truth." Behind the cameras, some teachers cried. Some students stood up. It wasn't just about X anymore. It was about every kid who got punished for doing right. Jonathan spoke next. "They hoped this would pass, that people forget. But this isn't about forgetting. It's about fixing what's broken." That moment went viral, not because of the name Musk, but because of the name X, the unknown. The kid no one expected to speak up. Sponsors pulled out from the school. The board called an emergency review, and the teacher in question resigned within 24 hours. Sometimes it only takes one kid saying, "That's wrong," and one adult saying, "He's right." That's when real change begins. And just like that, the boy who was silenced became the voice for thousands who never got the chance to speak. The school tried to regain control. PR firms advised containment, rewording, don't admit guilt, shift focus, highlight achievements. But the truth had already spread too far. One board member quit quietly. 2 teachers submitted anonymous statements. Stories emerged, students punished for calling out bullying, teachers protected for breaking rules. Parents formed a group. We deserve the truth. The school dismissed it as emotional overreaction, but every ignored voice only made the movement louder. Local politicians weighed in. One said, "We trust our educators." Another replied, "Until they punish kids for showing more integrity than the adults in charge." Jonathan wasn't looking for media attention, but he knew this wasn't just X's battle anymore. This was about fixing something that had stayed broken too long. When asked by a reporter what he hoped for, Jonathan said, "I hope we stop teaching kids to fear authority and start teaching authority to respect truth." Meanwhile, X stayed quiet, not out of fear, but strength. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's letting the world speak for itself. Every time a new article dropped, X read it slowly. He wasn't looking for his name. He was looking for the voices that had always been ignored. That weekend, 5 more students came forward with their own stories. The truth wasn't just leaking. It was flooding. And the school, once known for prestige, now trended for a very different reason: cover-ups, broken trust, and a kid who wouldn't stay quiet. Her name was Ms. Gaines. Young, sharp, thoughtful, and until now, silent. But she was in the room that day, and what she saw haunted her. She wasn't proud. She didn't stop it. She just froze. The moment Mr. Lawton mocked a biracial student's accent in front of the whole class. X stood up. "That's racist, sir." Everyone gasped. The room fell into stunned silence. And the teacher's face turned cold. "You want to play adult? Then take the punishment." Ms. Gaines typed a letter to the board. "I didn't speak then. I'm speaking now. That boy told the truth. We punished him for it." When her email leaked, the public flipped. Support doubled. The school's credibility collapsed. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. This was a system exposed. Some still defended the school. This shouldn't be public. He embarrassed the teacher. But others clapped back. Maybe adults shouldn't fear truth from a 13-year-old. Ms. Gaines faced backlash from coworkers, but when she walked into her next class, the students gave her a standing ovation. X texted her that night. "You didn't have to do that. Thank you for doing it anyway." It was his first time texting a teacher. She replied, "You taught me more in 10 seconds than I learned in 4 years of training." Heroes don't always wear suits. Sometimes they whisper hard truths. Sometimes they hit send on an email that changes everything. Elon finally asked for a dinner, not as a PR move, but as a father trying to understand the son he hadn't seen clearly in years. Jonathan was invited too. "You've been more present than I have this month," Elon admitted, offering him a seat at the head of the table. No cameras, no phones, just pasta, water, and overdue honesty. Elon looked at his son. "I know I miss things. Talk to me now. I'll listen." X didn't get angry. He didn't cry. He simply spoke like a kid who'd grown up too fast. "I wasn't scared they'd kick me out. I was scared no one would care." Elon looked away for a moment. The richest man in the world, humbled by one sentence. "You're right. I didn't see it." Jonathan stayed quiet. This moment wasn't his. But he felt something shift, not just between father and son, but in how healing actually begins. Elon asked one more thing. "Do you want to go back?" X shook his head. "I want something better built. For kids like me." That sentence hit different. A spark. Not revenge. Not pride. Rebuild. Not just for himself. For every kid who gets pushed out for speaking up. Elon nodded. "I'll fund it. You design it." Jonathan raised his eyebrows. "You serious?" Elon looked at X. He knows what they need better than any adult. That night, dinner ended with plans. Not for a protest, but for a new kind of school, where truth wasn't punished. It was protected. It started with a blank wall. And a question: what kind of school would make you feel safe? The answers poured in from every corner. No uniforms. No ranks. No blind authority. A place where every student could anonymously report abuse, and every report was seen within 24 hours. Peer advocates, public speaking classes, emotional resilience training, not just math and science, but courage and empathy. Jonathan brought in experts. Elon brought in architects. Jonathan brought in experts. Elon brought in architects. X brought in students. And for once, kids weren't just part of the system. They were building it. The internet laughed at first. A Musk kid school. Another experiment. But when the designs dropped, so did the silence. Thousands of messages arrived. "Can my daughter join? My son was expelled for less. Where was this when I was a kid?" And just like that, what started as a punishment became a blueprint. A second chance for more than just one voice. Even teachers reached out. "We want to teach there." Because they knew this was different. It wasn't just new. It was necessary. They named it the open room. No locked doors. No silence. No pretending kids can't see what's wrong. And for the first time in months, X smiled like a kid again. Not a headline. Not a burden. Just a builder. The school never apologized. Not publicly. Not privately. They rewrote the policy, but never said the words that could have helped him heal sooner. X didn't wait for it. He had built something better. But that doesn't mean the silence didn't sting. Jonathan once asked him, "Do you still want the apology?" He replied, "No, but I want them to give it to someone else next time." Because there would be a next time. A new kid. A new injustice. But maybe next time, someone would remember this one. A reporter once asked, "What did this whole thing teach you?" X smiled and said, "Adults aren't always right. But truth is." The principal quietly resigned 6 months later. The board was restructured, and a new head of equity was hired, trained by Jonathan's team. No press covered it. No hashtags trended. But the kids in that school started speaking up more. And the teachers started listening. The letter that once suspended a boy now hangs, shredded, in Jonathan's study, framed beside a photo of the first open room class. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Even paper can carry power until you burn it with truth. And the boy once kicked out became the one thousands looked up to. Not for who his father was, but for what he refused to accept. On September 5th, the doors opened. No red carpet. No flashing cameras. Just students, teachers, and the weight of second chances. The first student walked in wearing a hoodie. No dress code. No raised eyebrows. She whispered, "I thought I'd be nervous." She wasn't. She was free. Inside, walls held student artwork. Not trophies. Quotes from unheard voices. Not donors. This wasn't about control. It was about being seen. X stood near the entrance, watching them all enter. This time, no one pointed. No one whispered. He was one of them. Jonathan gave no speech. He stood at the back. This wasn't his stage. It belonged to the kids who had once been told to be quiet. Each class began with a circle, not a roll call. "Anything heavy on your heart?" the teacher would ask. And they'd actually wait to hear. One boy said, "I've never been in a school that wanted me to feel okay before the test started." He wasn't alone. The open room wasn't perfect. There were challenges. There were growing pains. But no one feared speaking the truth, and that alone changed everything. Parents cried at pickup, not because their child aced math, but because they came home saying, "They let me talk." Day one ended without incident. But the impact? Unmeasurable. A soft revolution began with a door that opened and never shut again. With success came questions. Critics called it soft, over-empathetic, unrealistic. Where's the discipline? To them, respect meant fear, not understanding. One anchor said, "Do we really want 12-year-olds questioning authority?" Another replied, "Maybe if we had, we wouldn't be cleaning up so many adult mistakes." Jonathan watched the debates quietly. He wasn't interested in applause or outrage. He was building a school, not a brand. X didn't care either. He was busy helping a new student find their voice. Because that's what mattered, not headlines. Still, trolls filled comment sections. "You're raising snowflakes. You're creating rebels." Jonathan smiled. Rebels for empathy? I'll take that. Some open room graduates went on to become artists. Others lawyers. One wrote a book called "I Didn't Get Suspended" for being right. Elon stayed mostly quiet. He supported from a distance. But in a rare tweet, he posted, "If you're scared of kids thinking for themselves, you're part of the problem." Donations poured in. So did threats. Because when you challenge the system pushes back. A fire alarm went off falsely one day. Security footage showed nothing, just shadows. But Jonathan knew old power doesn't go quietly. Still, every morning the doors opened. And that was louder than any critic could ever shout. One day, a letter arrived. No email, no call, just ink on paper, from the place where this story truly began. It was from Officer Marcus Webb, the man who once pointed a gun at Jonathan during a traffic stop years ago. The man who never apologized. The handwriting was shaky. The message short. "I watched what you built. You were right. I wasn't. I lost my badge. I deserved it." Jonathan stared at it for a long time. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just whispered, "You could have changed sooner." But there was something else in the envelope. A list of kids Webb had written up for attitude over his 20-year career. Jonathan read each name, each one likely punished for speaking, for questioning, for existing too loudly in front of power. He printed the names, hung them in the open room hallway. The sign above it read, "They were right too." X walked past it the next morning and said quietly, "Feels like a door is finally closing." Jonathan replied, "No, opening, wider than ever." The letter wasn't redemption, but it was proof. Even those who failed can still learn, still acknowledge, still grow. Sometimes healing starts with a whisper on paper. Sometimes that's louder than a megaphone. An envelope arrived, white, embossed, from the National Education Summit, the place where policies are shaped and future generations planned on paper. Inside, a formal invitation to speak. Not just attend, speak. About the open room. About truth. About listening to the people schools forget to hear. Jonathan hesitated. Politics were loud, risky. But X said, "If we don't speak, they'll speak for us." They flew to D.C. with no entourage, just stories, and a belief that education isn't about memorizing. It's about remembering who you are. The room was filled with suits, titles, numbers. But when X took the mic, they listened. Because he didn't speak like a statistic. He spoke like a survivor. "I was suspended for speaking up, so I built a school where you're rewarded for it." That line earned a silence deeper than applause. Jonathan followed. He didn't pitch. He testified. About broken systems. About lost kids. About how dignity can't be standardized. By the end, for districts requested to tour the open room, 2 senators offered support. One opponent quietly left the room. That night, X sat in the hotel lobby with Jonathan and said, "It feels real now. Bigger than us." Jonathan replied, "It always was. We just had to prove it." Years later, a school in Detroit painted a mural, not of a celebrity, not of a founder, but of a boy standing tall, holding no fear. It didn't say X. It didn't need to, because the mural wasn't about who he was. It was about what he stood for. By then, 18 open room schools had opened across 12 states. All different, all following one simple rule: let them speak. And listen, fully. X never took credit. He said, "I didn't build a movement. I built a response." Jonathan became a quiet advisor. Rare interviews. No book deal. He said, "The story belongs to the students. Not to me." The original school that expelled X? It was sold, rebuilt, reopened as an open room affiliate. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Every time a kid stood up in class and wasn't punished for it, they were living his legacy without even knowing his name. One student, when asked, "Who's the mural about?" replied, "It's about me. It's about all of us." And that's how X became more than a name. He became a shift, a moment, a symbol of what happens when a system gets challenged and changes. Because sometimes the kid they try to silence is the one who ends up changing the rules for everyone. Elon wasn't known for being sentimental. But one day he asked X to walk. No cameras, no distractions, just trees, time, and truth. They walked for almost an hour in silence. Then Elon finally said, "I thought giving you everything meant protecting you." X replied, "You did give me everything. But the most important thing came after you stopped trying to control it." Elon unfolded a letter, one he wrote and rewrote over a year. It simply read, "I'm proud of who you became and who I became because of you." X didn't say much. He just smiled. For once, there was no battle to win, just peace. Later that night, Elon posted, "Legacy isn't what you build. It's what you fix." Millions liked it, but only one person understood it fully. The richest man on earth had learned that control means nothing if your kid doesn't feel seen. They didn't always agree. They still argued. But now, they listened. And that changed everything. Elon never apologized perfectly. But sometimes, presence becomes the apology you never heard but always needed. Because even billionaires can learn from 13-year-old boys who refuse to accept silence. The mailroom at the open room overflowed. Letters, drawings, messages from kids who had never met X, but saw themselves in him. One letter read, "I spoke up in class. They tried to silence me, but I kept going because I saw what you did." Jonathan read every single one. He smiled, not because of the praise, but because of the ripple. Truth is contagious, especially when it comes from someone the system underestimated. The letters weren't just from kids. One janitor wrote, "You made me realize I've been watching wrong things happen for 10 years. I spoke up. Thank you." One grandma mailed, in a note, "I dropped out at 15. I wish your school existed back then. I'm proud of you, child." Another message, "I got expelled for fighting. Not fists, just my words. But your story gave me the courage to start again." Every message proved one thing. The system wasn't broken for one child. It was failing thousands. The open room became more than a school. It became a movement. A whisper turned roar. And all it took was one voice that refused to shut up. Years passed. Students came and went. But one class was special. The last one X would personally mentor before heading to college. He didn't tell them much. He just listened, watched, made sure they were building the room now. One girl stayed late after class and said, "They almost expelled me last year for correcting a teacher. You made me feel like I wasn't crazy." Another left him a note. "You never gave me answers. You taught me how to ask better questions." Jonathan watched X from the doorway, not as a leader, not as a legend, but as a young man finally passing the torch. On graduation day, no one mentioned GPAs. They shared truths, mistakes, stand-up moments. No one cried out of sadness, only from meaning. X placed a rose on the desk where he once sat, not as a goodbye, but a silent thank you to the boy he used to be. Jonathan gave X a hug that wasn't rehearsed. "Be proud of what you left here," he whispered. "You didn't fix the world, but you started something." The open room didn't close. It evolved. Because now, it wasn't just one boy's idea. It was everyone's. And the final bell that year didn't mark an end. It marked the beginning of generations unafraid to speak. A decade later, a museum in DC opened a special wing. Not for politicians, not for wars, but for the war against silence. In one glass case, the crumpled suspension letter. Beside it, a plaque, the paper that started it all. Kids on field trips walked past, wide-eyed. Teachers whispered, This is why we listen now." Visitors could record their own story in a sound booth. Thousands did. One button. On the wall. "Tell your truth." One father read the story of X and cried. His own son had been expelled for disrespect 10 years prior. Now, he knew it wasn't just him. Another visitor left a sticky note on the wall. "This room made me realize I wasn't wrong. I was unheard." Legacies aren't built on applause. They're built on what happens when the world finally hears you. X didn't visit the exhibit often, but every time he did, he stood silently at the letter. Not proud, not bitter, just thankful. Because sometimes the ugliest things become the start of the most beautiful changes. And the quietest voices become the loudest legacy. The world didn't become perfect. Injustice didn't vanish. But in thousands of classrooms across the country, the door now opened wider. New kids stood up. New adults listened. And old systems adapted. A principal once said, "The open room didn't replace schools. It reminded them what they were meant to be." Every kid now learned, your voice matters. Your truth is valid. And courage? It starts the moment you decide to speak. Jonathan retired quietly. No farewell speech. Just one last message pinned to the wall. Keep the door open, no matter who walks in. X. He became a teacher. Not for fame, not for legacy, but because he remembered how it felt when no one listened. He taught one thing above all. Truth isn't just spoken, it's protected. The door at the open room never locked. Not once. Not in 20 years. Because silence belongs outside, not in classrooms. And every student who crossed that threshold carried something invisible, the permission to challenge, question, protect, and rebuild. Because one day, long ago, a boy got kicked out for telling the truth. And that boy? He opened the door for everyone else. What do you think about X's journey and the impact of the open room? How did this story inspire you? And where are you watching from? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that spark change.